Joe, where is your cold open for Cool Hand Luke?
I'm still working on it.
What is taking so long?
I'm trying to avoid the most famous line in this movie, but it's all I can think of.
So, what we got here is failure to communicate an original joke.
You see, that's what I didn't want to do.
How about this? This is a situation of inadequate dialogue exchange.
What are you doing?
I'm helping. How about you're my dance instructor and you try to teach me how to dance and I do a move that sends me down a flight of stairs and you can say, what we have here is failure to coordinate.
That didn't help, George.
How about Luke Skywalker?
What?
You know, Star Wars. Darth Vader cuts Luke's hand off. Vader could say, what we have here is a failure to keep your hands to yourself.
That's a completely different movie.
And a completely different accent, but whatever. How about the egg eating scene where Cool Hand Luke eats 50 eggs?
Yeah. Okay, let's go with that. Ask me about eating 50 boiled eggs in one sitting.
Say, Joe, you know that scene in Cool Hand Luke where he eats 50 eggs? Do you think that could kill a guy?
I don't know if it could kill him, but it sure would kill anybody who falls into the bathroom. That man would pump out enough methane to set off combustible gas detectors across 17 states. Oh, does this still work? The podcast looks at old wigs and asks, does it still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Ramacka. And today we are discussing Cool Hand Luke from 1967 and some historical context. First, podcasty stuff. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. And Joe is on Blue Sky at joedixon.bravosierrakilo.social.
He means B Sky. Letter B, S-K-Y.
Or I could just spell it out using the phonetic alphabet, which is way harder to misunderstand if you know what the phonetic alphabet is.
If you know what the phonetic alphabet is, I'm sure people don't know what the hell you were doing.
Please tell your friends about us and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod. Now, Joe, take us back to 1967.
1967, my favorite year. But it wasn't such a great year for everyone else. There were worldwide protests against the Vietnam War, there were race riots in major U.S. cities, and Israel fought the 6-Day War. Though, once Israel won, we never had any more problems in the Middle East. So thank goodness for that.
Yep, no more problems in the Middle East. None.
Zero.
None
Zilch.
at all. None at all that I saw massive protests on every side of over the past 3 days.
Not at all. And 1967 also saw the Summer of Love, which was followed by the Fall of Syphilis. But let's focus on Florida in that year, since that's where Cool Hand Luke is set. Now, as I mentioned, there were a lot of riots in 1967, 159 of them according to what I read. Here are 2 that happened in the state of Florida. I got these off ChatGPT, but I checked. These were real. I will quote, Riviera Beach Riot. This event was part of the series of riots that occurred across the United States during the long hot summer of 1967. The Riviera Beach Riot started on July 3rd, 1967, at the Blue Heron Bar near the port of Palm Beach. A fight broke out, leading to the arrest of a 27-year-old black man, James Mitchell, under unclear circumstances. Rumors of police mistreatment sparked the riot, which grew to include 400 participants. The police response involved tear gas and the arrest of 45 people. Additionally, 14 teenagers were arrested in nearby West Palm Beach for possessing materials to create firebombs. The riot resulted in significant property damage, including 2 warehouses owned by the Mullins Lumber Company catching fire, causing $350,000 in damage. Next, Tampa Bay race riot. Between June 11th and June 14th, 1967, the Tampa Bay race riot occurred after the police killing of 19-year-old Martin Chambers, a suspect in a camera store robbery. This incident sparked a riot along Central Avenue in Tampa. Rioters specifically targeted white-owned businesses, and the violence escalated to a point where Florida Governor Claude Kirk Jr. had to deploy 500 Florida National Guardsmen, 235 Florida Highway Patrol troopers, and 250 local law enforcement officers from other jurisdictions. The riot lasted 3 days, ending the day after the deployment of these forces. End quote. And finally, let's look at a prison camp, since that's the setting for Cool Hand Luke. This story is brought to us from the Miami Herald. Headline, George.
Prison fire arson coroner's jury says.
This story is about an inquest into the fire at the J prison camp that killed 37 prisoners. I'm not going to read this, but you can find the link in our show notes. The reason I don't want to read it is because, while I presume the reporting is accurate, the inquest exonerates the prison guards and puts the blame entirely on the inmates, saying they started the fire because their porn magazine was taken away. Now, obviously, I have no clue what really happened here. However, if you're a prison guard and 37 guys under your care get all burned up, it sounds to me like you failed in your job at some point. I mean, they're confined in a space that you've been hired to watch, so you have to keep an eye on them. I don't care if they're criminals, men died and not one guard is criminally negligent. Not one. What about the state? The prison was a tinderbox, clearly. How is there not a lawsuit? According to Wikipedia, one guard was commended for rescuing 5 inmates, which is great, but that still doesn't mean there wasn't a massive institutional failure that really should have ended in monetary damages and resignations. But I guess that was the 60s. Hell, that's true today.
I mean, didn't we learn from Apocalypse Now that you don't take away a man's porn magazine?
Okay, George, tell us about Cool Hand Luke.
So, this was directed by Stuart Rosenberg,
whose work I've seen in the Amityville Horror, which I think I've previously mentioned that this film gave me nightmares because I thought the character in it, at the beginning, the house is supposed to be haunted, it's ridiculous, but...
So you're talking about the Amity Horror, not the movie we're talking about.
I'm talking about the literal Amityville Horror. Yes, the actual Amityville's crime that happened that they said, oh, the house is haunted because of this.
Gotcha.
Now, in the movie, they depict this happening, and the guy goes crazy, the son, and kills the whole family. And I thought for sure that was going to happen to me with my brother. So, made for good sleeping time.
Mm-hmm. This was written by Don Pierce, Frank Pearson, and Hal Dresner.
And Hal Dresner, I know from his work on... Yes, that was the name of a movie.
Yep.
That was about snakes, as you would imagine.
Blurbs. IMDb says, a laid-back Southern man is sentenced to 2 years in a rural prison, but refuses to conform.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
Laid back? I think there's something slightly wrong with him. I mean, the prison system is obviously worse. But he's just I don't know if it's pulling his performance or just the way the character's written, but there's something weird about the dude, to me anyway. I don't know if you got that same impression.
Yeah. They're just... We'll get there. Amazon says, when Luke Jackson, Paul Newman, is arrested for drunkenly vandalizing parking meters, he is sentenced to serve time on a prison chain gang. Although the warden, guards, and prisoners all try to break Luke's spirit, it becomes clear that Luke is not about to play by anyone else's rules.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's romanticizing this way more than it deserves.
Well, that was the impression. This is a man going against the rules, and that's standing up for himself and stuff of that nature. But here's the thing. Yes, the prison is bullshit. It's horrible. It's a monster. But you got 2 years. So maybe it's not the worst idea to just follow the rules so you can get the fuck out of there. That would be my idea.
Especially since, I don't know if I'll actually say this during the thing, but the rules weren't particularly bad or hard to follow.
True, but they also, the slightest thing and they hit you, so I don't know. Look, I think we both would agree on this. Getting 2 years for vandalizing on a fucking parking meter is outrageous. That's an absolute bullshit. At best, you get a fine or something. Mm-hmm. No one was hurt. No one was brutalized or anything. He vandalized a fucking park. He didn't even take the money out of them. He just popped them off their stand.
Hey, don't get so far ahead in the script of the very beginning of the movie that we're about to start talking about.
Get into it then.
Yeah. In the opening sequence, we see the film's protagonist, Luke, using a massive pipe cutter to gently but illegally dismantle parking meters on a city street. It is the dead of night, and he is inebriated. It's good that the film doesn't try to explain how he got there to be doing that. Luke himself can't even explain himself when he's approached by 2 bastards in a patrol car.
What are you doing there, fella?
I'm just captive from meeting.
You better come along with us.
Yeah, that's not bad audio. That's just...
There was a time in our country... Oh, well, it's 1967, so actually this is that time. But I remember as a kid in the 70s, or at least of New York cops, if they ever caught you doing... Again, this is early 70s. When they caught you doing some bullshit like this, and you were drunk, they just take you home. They didn't arrest you. So it's a whole different world. But then again, this is Florida, so I guess I'm like, no, we'll definitely arrest you for that.
Yep. So Lucas Luke Jackson is played by Paul Newman.
And I know Paul Newman from The Color of Money, The Verdict, The Towering Inferno, The Sting, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Hopper, and The Hustler. So he was in a lot of movies with "the" in it, in the title. At least are the ones I saw.
Yes, he was. And I know him as a voice in Cars.
Too much like The Cars. That would have been perfect.
Yeah. So next, it's sometime later, and we see a chain gang cutting the grass along a stretch of rural road. It's hot and humid, and these men have been sentenced to what is indeed hard labor. The prisoners are overseen by men armed with rifles and must ask these bosses permission for things like taking off their shirts or having a drink of water. The prisoners all seem at least resigned to their fate and have adapted to the rules of the prison. Joe, how many black people are in this northern Florida prison camp?
None, but in defense of the movie, it would have been segregated at the time, so it actually makes sense.
Fucking fair. All right. Asked and answered.
Asked and answered. And point of fact, in the that prison fire that I was mentioning earlier, that happened 1 week after they integrated, to which they thought maybe there was a sort of racial thing, but apparently they didn't find any reason to believe it was animus. It was just they got their porn magazine taken away, which I think is bullshit, but that's another story.
You don't do that. You just don't.
They don't. But people don't set themselves on fire because their porn magazine was taken away. It doesn't make any sense.
Nope. Luke arrives with a few other new inmates to be introduced to the captain, the man in charge of the prison camp. The captain is played by Strother Martin. And for the show, Joe and our friend Craig saw The Wild Bunch.
And he was also in...
One of Luke's new fellow inmates will be nicknamed Tramp, and I'm mentioning him only because the actor, is a DTSW alum. Tramp is played by Harry Dean Stanton, who we know for the show from Pretty in Pink, The Last Temptation of Christ, and Alien.
And I know from Repo Man, A Civil Action, and Private Benjamin.
And I know from Escape from New York, The Green Mile, and The Avengers.
You know, it's so weird. When I saw your listing of the performers in this, and I saw Harry Dean Stanton's name, I thought, well, he must have forgot Blue Velvet, or he just didn't want to remember because he hated the movie. And I'm looking like, no, he was not in Blue Velvet.
No, he wasn't in it.
I don't know why I keep thinking he's in Blue Velvet. If you put a gun to my head and said, who's in this movie, I would say Harry Dean Stanton. I don't know why I keep thinking he's in this movie. He's not in it.
And actually, I think Dennis Hopper was in this movie. He was one of the prisoners.
He's one of the prisoners, yeah, but he doesn't have any lines or anything.
I didn't list him anywhere.
Yeah, because he doesn't really say anything.
And he was in Blue Velvet, if anybody's wondering why the fuck I'm mentioning that right now. He was the amyl nitrate huffing bad guy in Blue Velvet. Or main star, depends on how you view the movie.
Mm.
The prisoners are instructed to refer to guards as boss and the captain as captain. The captain gives us some backstory on Luke. He's a World War II veteran who'd attained the rank of sergeant, and E6, the same equivalent rank that I left the Navy as.
Oh, I didn't know you were a sergeant?
I was a petty officer first class, which is an E6. An E6 in the Army is a sergeant, and E6 in the Navy is petty officer first class.
Ah, and those are the roughly equivalent?
They are exactly equivalent in pay.
Okay.
The E is enlisted.
Right. The only reason, because I don't know why, but whenever I think a sergeant, it sounds like a really high up there, but petty officer doesn't sound as high to me, but I guess that's just because of my ignorance.
Class petty officer.
I guess the word petty just makes it sound smaller.
Yep. Well, they even joke about that in Spaceballs. Petty excuse for an officer.
Ah, you're right, they do.
We don't learn why, but he was busted back down to private before he was discharged. That would be E1 Joe.
Okay.
This establishes him as having a vague anti-authoritarian bent that could have been used to greater effect than the beheading of parking meters.
Yeah, there are a bunch of riots and revolution going on. He could have been involved in those things.
Nope. Just a downtown, quiet, small-town night beheading parking meters. The new inmates are brought to the prison barracks and issued their numbered uniforms. The floor boss, Carr, lays down the rules. Violating any of them earns a night in the box, a cramped, unfurnished wooden shed. Carr is played by Clifton James, who for the show we know from Lone Star.
No, I've seen in quite a few films, actually. Know him from Live and Let Die, The Man with the Golden Gun, The Untouchables, Silver Streak, The Last Detail, and David and Lisa.
I always miss The Last Detail. I've definitely seen that.
That is a... God, I hate to say it.
We should put it on the list.
Yeah, I would say you should put it on the list, but our list is already so long.
It is, but It doesn't matter. We should put that on there. 'Cause if I remember correctly, I enjoyed the movie, but that doesn't mean that might have been because I was in the Navy watching that movie.
I remember enjoying it, and I wasn't in the Navy. Although I want to say this real quick in terms of like enjoying movies. This is the first time I had this experience, and it was with David and Lisa. This is a movie, when I first saw it, and I was really young when I saw it, loved it. It's about two people in a psychiatric institute who fall in love. Thought it was such a wonderful movie. Then years later, I saw it, and I thought it was one of the worst films I ever saw. I guess your opinions change as you get older.
See our episode of The Goonies to hear that happen with me in real time. And we've both seen Clifton James in Superman 2. When the established prisoners return, they provide another set of rules, like what seats at the poker table belong to who. The prisoners are unofficially led by Dragline, an uneducated but large man, and he doesn't immediately take a liking to Luke, who comes off as aloof and unwilling to toe Dragline's line.
Maybe we ought to call it no ears. You don't listen much, do you, boy?
I ain't heard that much worth listening to. There's a lot of guys laying down a lot of rules and regulations.
I know, especially in 1967, rules and regulations, sometimes they're important.
Yeah.
Not all rules and regulations are necessarily a bad thing. Some of them keep people alive. I just want to put that out there.
Yup. Dragline is played by George Kennedy, who we know for the show as the crew boss in Airport.
Airport, a movie we both really liked, to our surprise.
Yes, we were surprised to have liked it.
God, and I've also seen him in a bunch of films. So let's begin. I've seen him in Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, Creepshow 2, Modern Romance, Airport 75, and Airport 77, Earthquake, and The Dirty Dozen.
And we've both seen him in 3 Naked Gun movies. The Naked Gun from The Files of Police Squad, Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear, and The Naked Gun 33 1/3, The Final Insult. Come dawn, the prisoners, new and old, start their routine. They muster out into the yard and are counted off into transport trucks. On the way, they complain about the weather, and one of the prisoners sells his easy broom job to one of the newbies.
Look, I've never been to prison myself, but I would know enough, like, you can't reassign. The prisoners don't get to assign people to jobs. So, like, this guy really should have been smart enough to go, like, how can I really buy my way into this other big gig?
Along those lines, there is no such job. This is hard labor, after all. The newbie's gullibility will cost him later. The prisoners are overseen chiefly by Boss Godfrey, a man they call No Eyes on account of his mirrored sunglasses. Boss Godfrey is played by Morgan Woodward.
Well, I'm seeing, to my amazement, I didn't realize he was in this, Which Way Is Up, the Richard Pryor movie. I can only imagine he has to play a character similar to this, some evil white man. What else would he be doing in a Richard Pryor movie?
One man falls out from exhaustion and is placed in a transport truck to cool off. Luke goes to work with gusto, which confuses the other prisoners and unsettles the guards. Lunch is beans and bread, then back to work for the rest of a 12-hour shift. By the time they're done, Luke can barely pull himself into the truck. Then back at the camp, the prisoners are inspected, presumably for contraband found by the road or maybe ticks. I don't know. The newbie who'd been fooled is sent to the box for one night on account of annoying the bosses with his whining. As the prisoners bed down for the night, they express surprise that the new guy was put into the box on his first day and exculp themselves with their intent that it was only a joke. Dragline digs at Luke for being exhausted. Luke says he just needs a nap.
Yeah, how dare he be exhausted after all that hard labor? What?
Yeah. The next day, they're back on the roadside near a homestead where the girl is sloppily washing a car in barely a piece of fabric. The men ogle, stare, and mutter crudities. Dragline calls her Lucille, though none of them know her name. They are all on the verge of creaming themselves by the time the scene is over. Joe, why do you think this scene was in the film?
Oh, I think we both know why this scene is in the film. First, it's actually a cheat on two things. Number one, it shows all the men in prison and they're just horny. There's a difference between that. But also, it gives the audience a cheap thrill because this is mostly a dude movie. So there's the opportunity to show off the body of this hot girl. And she literally takes her breasts and rubs them against the glass.
With the camera inside the car.
Yes,
looking at this as if this is what the guys were seeing, but they can't possibly have been seeing that.
Also, nobody cleans their car with their chest.
I mean, you haven't seen me clean my car, Joe.
I have not, but I'm pretty sure you don't put your chest. And if you'll notice, when the scene changes, she's dry.
Like Ben Shapiro's wife.
Yeah, like Ben Shapiro's wife, yes.
The girl we're just giving her credit because she jiggled her boobs for us, so we owe her at least that. The girl is played by Joy Harmon. Back at the camp, the men shower together, fantasize about Lucille, and one sings Old MacDonald for some reason before turning in for the night.
I wonder how that must be such an uncomfortable situation because they're all fantasizing about this girl. What if you get a boner in that group? I mean, what
I don't think anybody would care because everybody at some point is going to get a boner.
Maybe.
Oh, your dick works. Ha ha ha. Dragline keeps going on about Lucille until Luke tells him to knock it off. For Dragline, who is not used to being challenged in any way at all, them's fighting words. And fighting words here are settled by boxing. The next day, that happens. Dragline and Luke square off. Luke isn't much of a boxer, but he's got gumption to spare. In fact, his refusal to give up eventually results in Dragline walking away from the fight entirely.
Yeah, everyone's enjoying it, and then as he keeps getting hit and getting back up, they go, oh, just lay down, man. He won't do it. And everybody just slowly walks away.
Yeah, everybody goes from excitement to concern to disgust to apathy.
Yeah.
Which, this was a very interestingly shot scene. And they captured a lot of emotion in it. And this was a good scene.
Okay.
I think. Guy with no degrees.
I agree.
The guards see this and see Luke's stubbornness as cause for concern. Luke's stubbornness earns him respect from Dragline, who invites him to sit next to him for a poker game. It's during this game that Luke gets his nickname and the movie's title, Cool Hand, as an homage to his unshakable disposition.
And also, during the poker game, he has a good hand. I mean, as in poker hand in the cards, or he fakes his way. He doesn't have anything, but he makes everyone think he does, and they all bet, and he wins the hand. Cool hand, Luke.
Yep.
By the way, have you ever played poker?
Yes.
Were you good at it?
No.
Okay. I never played.
I think I might be better now. I have a much better poker face than I did as a child, or a younger, unmedicated ADHD person.
Well, I was invited to a poker game. Maybe we should go sometime.
Yeah. The next day, the prisoners' families come to visit. Among them is Luke's mother, Arletta, and some of his other kin. His mother is sick and dying, probably of emphysema, and smokes like a chimney, nestled in the back of a pickup truck. We can see where Luke gets his rebellious personality. Arletta is played by Jo Van Fleet,
whom I've seen from East of Eden, the James Dean movie.
Arletta is disappointed that he never settled down and gave her grandchildren to fawn over.
I ain't asking what you're gonna do when you get out, because I'll be dead and it don't matter.
She's leaving everything to his brother.
Luke agrees, that's probably best.
Yeah. His brother gives him his banjo and says now he doesn't have any reason to come around home.
Oh, just real sweet.
Well, in a way, it's also, unshackling him, saying you don't owe us anything.
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
And as his family drives away, his mother cries.
I think I mentioned that I'd seen this movie before many years ago, obviously, when I was a much younger person. And I've seen parodies of it. And I just want to share with you some of the jokes I remember from Mad Magazine. This is all from memory, so they could be off. If anybody actually has these Mad Magazine editions, by all means, share it with us and let me know if I got it right. They have a panel where he's talking to his mother, and she says, "You said mommy to me once, and then our conversations have gone downhill ever since." And another joke they have in it is, "She could never see the irony of calling me a son of a bitch." You didn't enjoy those? That's what I remember.
Okay. The next work detail is to fill sand in onto a road after it's been tarred by a truck. Luke does his thing of working with enthusiasm, and it becomes infectious. The crew ends up finishing 2 hours early, and, kind of surprisingly, that earns them 2 hours of relaxation time because they can't keep working on a road that's done needing work. Then one rainy, stormy night, while one prisoner is reading steamy erotica out loud. No, we never did that in the Navy, Joe. Dragline is goaded into enlisting Luke in an eating contest. 50 hard-boiled eggs in 1 hour. The next 3 scenes are about the preparations for and rules of this before we watch him do that. He doesn't barf, and it earns him and Dragline a bunch of money.
Oh, before he's already kind of odd, but that's when he's at his weirdest, when he's lying on that bed, and he's like, he volunteers for this.
Yeah.
Dragline then drag him into it. He goes like, oh, I can eat 50 eggs. I don't know why I'm doing an accent. I can eat 50 eggs. And like, no one told him to say that. He just lying there. Well, I think his eyes are closed when he says it, doesn't it? It looks so weirdly shot. It comes off as such a weirdo to me, right? In that moment more than any other. Like, what's up with this dude?
On another roadside detail, the prisoners encounter a rattlesnake. They jump out of the ditch. Luke grabs it by the tail and holds it up so that No Eyes can shoot it with his rifle.
Man, you sure can shoot.
Luke says that, and the camera zooms in on Luke's reflection in No Eyes' sunglasses, in a textbook example of foreshadowing. Dragline warns him against messing with No Eyes before a thunderstorm sends them scrambling for the trucks. Luke holds up his shovel and dares the big bearded boss in the sky to take his life.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. I think one of the reasons he got the 2 years for, and that's why all these guys are, although some of them obviously committed serious crimes, is this is free prison labor. This is just another form of slavery, really, but legal, you know?
Yeah, as allowed for in the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Yeah. One night, a letter arrives for Luke, informing him that his mother has died. He reacts coolly to this, other than playing and singing Plastic Jesus by Lalo Schifrin.
His response, the character's response, Paul Newman's performance is all fine. Everyone's standing around? I thought it was a bit much.
Yeah, it's a little weird. They're a little bit too invested in this guy.
Yeah, it was way too much.
It's like, oh, there's our protagonist of the movie we're in.
I can see going over to, oh, dude, I'm sorry your mom died, blah, blah, blah. But they were like standing back as he's playing the. I'm like, what the fuck? There's a prison. They don't have anything else to do but watch him do that.
I mean, it's a prison. They might not have anything else to do except watch him do that.
Yes, true.
According to the captain, when a prisoner's family dies, that prisoner starts thinking about running to pay their respects and whatnot. So for Luke's ostensible own good, the captain has him remanded to the box for a while to prevent that from happening.
I completely forgot that they put him in the box the first time simply because his mother died, which is fucked up. What a shitty thing to do. We just assume you're going to try and accept, which he does, but I mean, you put him in a box after his mother died.
He doesn't until after they put him in the box, though.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't until they actually do it to him. It's like, what the fuck, man?
Like, he doesn't try to escape until after they said, we don't trust you to not try and escape.
Right.
That may have been
the inciting incident?
Yeah. Like, this, over halfway into the movie, might have been the inciting incident.
I don't want to say, because
fuck the parking meters, it was this.
I just want to say, though, because you told me something I didn't realize, that when you were in the military, when you're in the Navy, if it was understood that if you were captured, and not just you, any sort of military person was captured, they were expected to try and escape.
Yeah.
And I learned that in Europe, I don't know if you've heard this, in Europe, you're also a prisoner that's expected to escape. It's not unreasonable. You won't get extra time if you try to escape because it's seen as perfectly natural. It's like, of course you got to try to break out of prison. Boy, do we not have that in this country.
No, this country has a dangerous and sadistic, punitive bent to everything in our justice system.
100%.
Luke is there until his mother is buried, so probably about a week. The captain lets him out right before a holiday, and the prisoners throw a 4th of July party. Luke uses the sound to mask his sawing of floorboards. After the bell rings for the party to stop, Dragline keeps Carr occupied by having him read some smut. Luke escapes, followed by another prisoner, Wickerman. Wickerman is noisy and gets caught climbing the fence, which clues the guards in to check who else is missing. Luke has a head start and makes it quite a ways, even with the hounds on his tail. One hound chases him until it dies of exhaustion, and eventually, Luke is caught. He's brought back to the road where the prisoners are working. With everyone watching, his legs are shackled. He tells the captain to not be so good to him, and the captain knocks him down a hill. Then the captain delivers the most famous line from this film that I only have memorized because it's played over the intro to Guns N' Roses' Civil War.
What we've got here is failure to communicate. Some men you just can't reach. So you get what we had here last week, which is the way he wants it. Well, he gets it. And I don't like it any more than you, man.
No, I do think you like it more than these men. I think you like it a lot.
Yeah.
The depiction of the prison guards in this, and so much we know anything about them, just the biggest bullies, just absolute scumbags. Clearly, all the power in the world, they abuse every bit of it.
Mm-hmm. During meal break, Luke tells the other prisoners how he got caught. He'd managed to get about 1.5 miles away and steal a new car. He'd stopped at a red light, and a police cruiser pulled alongside, with the bastards being observant enough to wonder why a disheveled dude in state-issue clothing is puttering around in a new car.
That's fine police work.
Yep, that's a quote from the movie just about.
Yeah.
Later in the day, Luke asks for a pee break. And then, using a string to shake bushes from a distance, he escapes again. Luke enlists the help of 2 little black boys. One furnishes him with an axe with which to break his shackles. The other provides pepper and chili powder that Luke spreads on the ground, promising that they'll enjoy what they see when the dogs come through.
That, I had no particular problem with that scene, except it just seemed weird to the boys, like, oh, I can cut your chains. Oh, you can't. Yes, you can. And he takes the axe from him, and like, I don't know why the kids would care. I don't know. It just seemed, there was nothing wrong with this thing per se. I don't think there was any, the fact that you keep calling them boys, they are little boys, so that's not a big deal. I don't think it seemed particularly racist in any way, anything like that. I just thought it was kind of weird. Did you get that? Just like, why are these?
It's very because the script said so.
Yes. I think that's a good good description of it. Yeah.
Although I will say, yeah, it didn't play into racism.
No.
It seemed rather inclusive and a little bit aware of the economic disparity between black communities and, white communities. Mm. It was a kind of rundown little town, but it was surviving. It was, there was a mother out there hanging her stuff up. The kids, their clothes seemed fine. They spoke well enough. And he treated them like children.
Yes.
Not like black children, just like children.
Regular old children.
I don't know that we could expect more out of 1967. His gift to the boys is the hounds coming through and going into sneezing fits. The kids are certainly amused because those big, dumb, adorable faces going into sneezing fits is amusing. One night, Dragline gets a magazine at mail call. He assumes it's from his uncle. Inside is a photo of Luke with 2 beautiful women in what looks like a decent bar. On the photo is written,
"Dear boys, playing it cool, Luke."
The photo causes quite a commotion amongst the inmates.
Right. I think earlier Dragonline had mentioned his uncle in some sort of capacity, and I think that's where he got the name from. Mm-hmm. And that's why Luke wrote the name on the mail. There are so many questions about how he managed to pull that off. Although I get it. He said he faked the photo, blah, blah, blah. But still, how did you do that?
We'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
In fact, the photo becomes a hot commodity, with Dragline charging what amounts to admission for a glance. Before long, Luke is caught again. He's dragged back at night, beaten bloody, and tells the prisoners that the picture was a fake. Like, I don't know what that even means in this context. What without Photoshop or AI, and by that I mean algorithmically interpreted art existing, but whatever. Like, what do you mean it was fake? Did you have mannequins that looked surprisingly lifelike in a fake bar that was painted to look like a real? In what way was that picture fake?
Well, there were ways to manipulate photographs back then where you could put yourself in the picture with 2 people who aren't there. So that's not too ridiculous for 1967. The thing is, that would cost money, and I love that.
I mean, it said it cost him a week's pay, but week's
work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he said he was basically finding odd jobs here and there.
I guess.
He, made a snide remark around one of his bosses, and the boss turned him in. That's how he got caught this time.
That's right. You're right. Yeah, I guess. But yeah, it's not that too ridiculous that there was a process you could do. I don't know about how you get in a magazine. That I don't know.
Well, it was basically just paper clipped into the magazine.
Oh, okay. The way I saw it was literally in the magazine. Okay, so he put it in himself. Okay, that makes way more sense.
Yeah. Luke tells them to stop living vicariously through him and make their own escape attempts or some shit. Back out on the road, working, Luke's antics have cost him any goodwill from the bosses who physically abuse him. And he doesn't even get to sleep in his rack for a while. He spends his nights in the box. Luke goes on an unannounced hunger strike and is told that he has to eat or spend another night in the box. The prisoners help him, each taking a spoonful of his food so that he can clean his plate and maintain his dignity. Well, the bosses don't want him to have any dignity. They want him broken, so they play a game with him. He's not allowed out on the road. Instead, he's got to get his dirt out of Boss 1's ditch after getting beaten. Then, when the other prisoners return, he gets beaten again and told to get his dirt out of Boss 2's yard. Then, in the morning, Boss 1 comes along to beat him again for his dirt being in the boss's ditch again. Then he's beaten again before he begs the bosses to not hit him anymore. He has a hard time getting to his rack and passes out on the floor of the barracks.
And they, for some reason, did you understand this? why the other prisoners don't assist him? Why suddenly now they're not interested in his welfare? Because remember, he falls down the ground and he picks his hand and he even says something about it, that no one's there to help him get up.
Yeah, I don't know, Joe. I think we needed to see him be lonely and isolated. I think the filmmakers needed us to see that. I don't know why.
All right.
He's already in fucking prison. Back out on the road, Luke is now the boss's errand boy, dutifully fetching water and No Eyes' rifle. He appears to be well and truly broken. When Luke is told to go prepare a turtle that No Eyes shot for lunch, he steals a transport truck. Dragline jumps onto the truck with him, and No Eyes shoots ineffectually. What's more, Luke has also stolen the keys to the other trucks, so they're kind of in the clear. He and Dragline ditch and camouflage the truck. Dragline is over the moon in awe of Luke's ability to fool the guards, though Luke denies ever having planned anything, ever.
And we see that he clearly didn't plan this that well. Although, there had to be some planning. He did take the keys out of the truck, so it wasn't...
Exactly, yeah. At night, they stop to have a talk. For his part, well, Dragline,
We going by my house and we gonna have a big meal. Then I'm gonna show you a couple of farm girls that really knows what for.
So that's that fucking guy.
I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever find yourself escaping from prison, do not go home. That is the first place they're going to look for you.
Yeah.
You can never go home again. Forget it. Don't go to your parents. Don't go to your brothers. Don't go anywhere near
Don't go to your
places.
ex-girlfriends. Don't go to your best friends. Don't go to the town you're from at all.
Not at all. That is where they're going to look for you.
Because, let's face it, you're dumb enough and you're going to go there.
Well, I think I told this story before, but here's what I'm saying. I remember this story. These three guys escaped from a prison.
Alcatraz. Yeah, or whatever.
I don't think it was Alcatraz, but it doesn't matter. But they escaped through a laundry truck, whatever. And three different dudes. It was interesting because they were all different races, but it doesn't matter. And they got captured, each and every one, because they all went back to their old neighborhood. Like, yeah, no wonder the cops are going to pick you up. It's the first place they're going to look.
Yep. Luke wants to split up and be on his own. Dragline starts doubting his decision to join in the escape, but ultimately agrees to split up.
Yeah, because he says, I actually only had a little more time to go before I will be out. Now they're going to put more time on.
Mm-hmm. A storm threatens to open up above him, so Luke takes refuge in an abandoned church. Then he has a little chat with God. You know, the problem of evil, predestination, and all that. He says he's getting tired of being himself and asks what to do next. He even gets on his knees in the precious moments position. With no answer, the scene can end. Then Dragline arrives, brought by the prison staff. They caught him almost immediately after they split up. Dragline says the bosses won't kill him if he comes quietly. So Luke goes to the door and starts giving that super famous line that the captain said earlier, and No Eyes shoots him right through the neck. Dragline catches him and helps him to the cars, where the captain orders him taken to the prison hospital, far enough away that he'll almost certainly bleed out. Then Dragline attacks No Eyes, who loses his mirrored sunglasses that he was wearing at night in a storm for some fucking reason.
Oh my God, you're right. Why is he wearing his shades?
And still managed a perfect neck shot on Luke.
Did this scene remind you of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. As Luke is driven away with a stupid grin on his face for Dragline, those glasses get run over. And then, back at work, near that church, Dragline tells the other prisoners about Luke and his smile and how he was somebody. The end.
So, George, does this film still work?
Yeah. Holy shit, yeah. Like, this is an important period. Like, this isn't an unrealistic look at prison life in this time period in American history. And for whatever problems Luke had as a character, he is a interesting character. You get interested in him. You want to know what his motivation is. I don't know what his fucking motivation is. He seems to have an anti-authoritarian bent. But I like my own little pet hypothesis that he didn't really start wanting to fucking run until after the warden stuck him in the box because his mom died. Like, that pushed him over the edge. So I think this movie, it's a decent movie. It's 2 hours, but it
goes by pretty fast.
Yeah, it goes by pretty fast. And it's kind of episodic in a way, which helps it go by fast.
Yes.
The acting is fantastic.
Yeah, got some Oscar nominations.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think I'm kind of surprised to be saying it. It still works.
Well, I'm not surprised you're saying it because it's true. It does still work. It's a very good film. For all, we also see the flaws in films. I don't think any of them are perfect. Did we ever find a favorite film? I don't think we have. But this works for what it is. And yes, it's still relevant to today. As we still have prison gangs, for God's sake, in Florida.
Yep.
Who still go out on the road and doing stuff that's for free or very low pay so the state can, not have to tax rich people. Yeah, no, so all this is still realistic. Hopefully today, vandalism doesn't get you 2 years in prison, but maybe in some states it does still. Mm-hmm. Everything they were doing in the jail didn't seem unrealistic. The jail itself didn't seem unrealistic. And the author of the actual book, Cool Hand Luke, is loosely based on his time in prison during the 50s. So, yeah, so it was based on a real thing that happened to somebody, although obviously he doesn't get killed or anything like that. Yeah, and the acting is superb. Yeah, very good film. It is 2 hours. I think it's 2 hours and 12 minutes. Goes by very quickly. Because, again, yeah, you're right. It's episodic, splits up things differently. I still find the character weird. I think he's a weirdo.
He is weird, but he's weird interesting.
But he's weird interesting, and the film is interesting. So, yes, I think it still works as well.
Alrighty.
So, George, what is up next?
Next episode will be a Patron's Choice episode, and we don't know what it'll be because our patrons vote on those, and that vote hasn't been finalized yet. If you want to vote, but are not a patron, you can fix that by becoming one at patreon.com/DTSWpod.
So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Romaka. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's no one around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
Luke.
Here, Mom.
When gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be?
Wrong movie!
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Romaka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
I just want to say it is North Florida, so...
I used to live there. Were you in North Florida or South Florida?
No, Central.
Central, okay.
The part of New Jersey that doesn't exist.
Okay. Who do you think killed JFK?
What is your biggest irrational fear?
Do you think Trump will be criminally convicted?
Where was your most unforgettable vacation?
Will you want to serve under Captain Sisko from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Captain Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean, or Captain America from the comics or MCU?
Fill in the blanks. My entire life is actually a story of blank and blank.